My name is Bernard Sweeney. I am still just about an Irish traveller. This is not a follow-up video from yesterday's one around the Traveller Assembly. There are a few more videos I will do on that, explaining that the Traveller Assembly is not just a political platform, nor will it be, or could it be, or should it be, ever copy, mimic, emulate, whatever it might be. Do not copy the settled political system. That's the whole purpose of the Traveller Assembly. I got lambasted yesterday. I put up a video. I highlighted a situation where traveller activists were running as individuals for the Senate. I have nothing against individualism. Every person has a right to do whatever they want to do. I'm not stopping that, preventing that, or even bringing that down. Nor was I criticizing the people. I said they were two good people. Nor did I say anything negative, other than replace the ideology that they have at the moment. In other words, replace the way of thinking that they have, because it's incorrect. And it's factual that it's incorrect, because we are dying as a result of it. So your mistake is our death sentence, simple as. So travellers get offended. I've been approached, not approached, but I've been trying to lure into a couple of arguments in the past with people that I know that come from organisation backgrounds that had a strong dislike for people who criticised their coordinator, member of the settled community, for the misuse of tens of thousands of euros. Highlighted the inequalities that was happening within the organisations, the way they were treating travellers. That's okay. I mean, I'm used to being an outsider. But I want to address the issue and remind all traveller activists, every single last one of them, anyone that claims or proclaims to be a traveller activist, speaking on behalf of travellers, you're not an independent. You are not an individual. You can pretend you are, and you can give yourselves these titles to excuse yourself from participating or addressing the inequalities and injustice that's happening under your nose while you turn a blind eye to it. You may not like me, and that's perfectly fine. I'm not the most likable person to start with. It doesn't mean that my ideas should not be listened to, particularly that I am a traveller. I have a family. I come from a community and a clan. And I've seen enough death, misery, and violence growing up. That's not to say that I disrespect those who are participating in forms of conflict. I understand where them conflicts stem from. I know how they work. We know the origins of them. We know the psychology behind them. But no, traveller organisations have a completely different mentality from the travellers themselves. I said yesterday, and I'll say it again, they have disconnected travellers. I know several activists that have blocked many travellers. These are not travellers that have nothing better to do with their time. These are people that went back to school. These are people that got degrees, PhDs, you name it. No. And the people that are in the organisation, this is the downfall. This is the side effect, unfortunately. In the middle of a pandemic, we have to talk about this because it's all connected. But when you highlight the organisations, their inequalities, the downfall of that is when you fall out, particularly in Dublin, no doubt about it. You fall out one traveller in Dublin, not fall out. You tell them that, you know, what you're doing here is actually killing people. They get offended because they feel that they are some way special, chosen, that they know what they know and I'm only guessing and everybody else is chancing their arm. But they know because they've got settled connections. Oh, mother of God. Anyhow, when you fall out one traveller in Dublin, you fall out with all the organisations. And it doesn't take long to cop on why that happens. Did you ever hear the saying, if you fall out with one, you fall out with the family, the whole family? Well, that is the organisations in Dublin. They're first cousins, they're in-laws, nephews and nieces. They're running several of the organisations that have blocked, stopped travellers left, right and centre. Now, again, in the middle of a pandemic, am I attacking organisations? Am I attacking each and every traveller activist? I'm not attacking you. I'm trying to address something, but you're refusing to listen. Worse than that, you are refusing to participate. I had contacted last year, I've been doing it for quite a few years, but last year I contacted the National Traveller Mediation Service, which was a state-funded project to educate, train travellers how to resolve and deal in conflict. So I contacted them. So So I sent them, and they went to Pavy Point and they went to Irish Traveller Movement, and both of the organisations rejected any formal meeting or conversation because they took on board that I was personalising. They have no recollection of, oh, you don't need it because it's all on social media, where they would brand someone a liar, they would brand them a traitor to their community, a bully, all of this because you're trying to address issues. It doesn't mean that I'm some righteous, religious type person, far from it. I'm not perfect either, far from that also. But I have no problem owning up to that and saying that. I had a terrible past, drink, drugs, you name it. A lot of regrets, a lot of shame. But what do? Lie down and die? No, I don't. I get up and I keep going forward. It's not because I truly feel that I'm better or smarter than the people in the organizations, because I do not, and I've made this clear for years, I would not take a job in their organizations. I do not want to be in their organizations. I do not want their organizations to go away, and I do not want them to go away. But I need them to do what they abide by or swore to do. So let me bring it back to the individualism, the independence, and I do my own thing kind of thing. If you are doing that, and that's your personal feeling, and you're right maybe, but as a collectiveness, as someone who has been preaching the community development principles all these years, telling people that collectiveness, empowerment, employment, opportunities, equality, working where the traveller is at, none of that has happened. It has happened in the most condescending ways. It has happened in the most dictatorship ways. I've met few traveller women so far who come from the organizations, who are a collectiveness. And they would try to lure people into this, not lure people, particularly travellers, particularly where they want to nail someone and label someone. So they'll say, you should address me as a traveller woman. I mean, what kind of dictator bullshit is that? For someone in national organizations that has dominance and control of our lives by participating in settled politics, making some bad, dreadful decisions that have led to death and continues to do so. But our supreme leaders want us to address them this way, that way, and any other way they feel pleased. If not, they will tar you, they will exclude you, or they will block you. That's it. This is what they're doing to the so-called vulnerable community they're meant to be getting support from. These people get paid to do this. So you might say, well, that's not, maybe it's just me. Like as I mentioned a minute ago, there's been several travellers. It's been happening for years. And no disrespect. Some of the traveller organizations, again, this is just not telling freedom to preach or freedom of speech, because that one you do get confused with. I'm telling you what is factual. I'm saying come back and prove me wrong. And it's not because I feel better or that I'm right to make things better. It's because it'll highlight the fact that you are incorrect, that your approach is dangerous, that the mentality that you're operating on is literally killing travellers. I mentioned yesterday about Tyson Fury, when it came to, it is not necessarily a physical issue that's killing our people. It's a psychological one. So I mentioned Tyson Fury. Of course, I didn't mention the other person's name that went for the Senate, nor did I mention the person that ran alongside her. Well, not alongside her, but two travellers. Of course, I mentioned the man, but not the woman. I didn't mention the woman out of respect because I was putting out something there, whether it was obvious or not, but it was only obvious to the people that knew it. So, of course, this caused a bit of a label. I've got branded a liar, that have an attitude towards traveller women, all of this attitude. They don't sit back and realize and think for a moment, hold for a second. This is maybe one disgruntled, broken, shattered, fractured type person. But isn't that who they were sent out to support and help in the first place? Do they ever sit back and wonder that suicides they keep sprouting off about, all the awareness they do, most of it is bollocks. I've been telling this for years. Their addressing of domestic violence has been bollocks. Been telling them black for 20 years. I'll tell you why it's a lot of bollocks, and forgive my language, I'll get ridiculed for that too maybe, but who gives a shit at this stage? And again, I have no animosity against these people. My frustration isn't with you as a person. I admire everything that you're doing. I respect everything you're doing because you believe it's correct and you believe it's right. And there's no reason you not to believe that because that's the way you were taught. But the facts speak differently. The statistics are showing differently. So somewhere along this miscommunication and conflict that we're having, people are dying. I'm saying it's wrong what you're doing and how you're doing it. It doesn't mean you stop doing and you go home and that's it, you lose your job. You might get angry that you might think I'm making this about you and your job, but you've made it about you and your job. And let me tell you how you have done so and how every single traveller activist has done so. That when you get involved supporting the community, you sprouted off all the community development principles. I had mentioned some of them a moment ago. That is a collectiveness. Then you participated in calling our community the Irish Traveller Movement. And that is not a movement. There is no individualism in movement. There is no I in movement. Actually, there is. M-O-B-E, movement, yeah. No, there's not either. But that's who you're dealing with, someone that even has struggles with word. But I didn't go to school. I don't claim to be a smart aleck. I don't claim to know it all. I get teased, mocked by a few traveller activists that works in organisations, and no disrespect to them. But you weren't really the brightest people in the first place to start with. The people that were having conflict with that particular organisation, other organisations, were the people with the PhDs and the degrees. Do you not think that there was something bizarre there? That these people were saying, much the same what I was saying, but are more afraid to say it now because look what happens. Look at the way organisations have cut off people and tortured and destroyed people who studied in college for years. I didn't go into your education system. I don't have that educational mentality. I don't have that discipline. But I'm going to tell you why your individualism is killing us. Will you take it on board and you see this is another rant and I come on for a Sunday giving out about the traveller organisations in the middle of a pandemic? Like I said yesterday, we've always been in crisis. We've died at 65, most of our communities died at 44, highest rate of suicide in Ireland. No, they don't talk about the men. You know, they do talk about the men, but they don't talk about men in a good way. They project men as a perpetrator of domestic violence. Of course, there is elements of that. Domestic violence doesn't work like that. Gender equality doesn't work like that. 75% of the deaths in our community are men, male, all died. 75%. It's a lot of deaths. There has been a lot of deaths. There will be more deaths. That doesn't tell you the psychological issues there that might give way to domestic violence, that might, give life to some kind of situation where it's difficult, where the person doesn't even know if they're in the right mind or what kind of mind they might be in. I'm not justifying any form of domestic violence, but as I said 20 years ago, that you were doing it wrong. And that stemmed from a government policy in the 1960s, where they thought they'd lure away traveller women. And the idea was that they put the traveller women into the education centres and then they would educate their children. And before you know it, everybody would be settled people. That didn't really work. But what did work was NGOs, traveller organisations. That was the ultimate, that's a technique that's older than time. Pay them, put them into positions and jobs, give them titles, happening for hundreds of years. It's kind of difficult. And again, I take no pleasure. It doesn't do me any good to come on here to ridicule these people or to ridicule organizations. But how dare you think for a moment that you could walk into an organization under the ethos of community development and empowerment and make it all about yourself? You do not have a right to individualism when you're in a movement. That's a sacrifice you're meant to give up. But you didn't. Most of the traveller actors I've ever seen took advantage of it. They created a career ladder. They made it about themselves. They always came first. They used a community platform to create their own ambitions and rise above everybody else. That is some mentality. You might get upset about that. You might say you go out and you break your back every single day. The people who break their backs every single day are a few of the people that are in the most lowest paid jobs, volunteers. They're the people that break their backs. Settled people don't break their backs. We haven't seen some of the settled people in the organizations. They refuse to talk to travelers. You would think that they had any brains among them, that the first thing they would have said to the travelers that works for them, because that's who most of these people do. They work for the settled people in the organizations. Again, it sounds like I'm bitter and angry, doesn't it? Frustrated and angry. Angry and frustrated, but not bitter, because I don't have no bitterness for you. So you go on about your business, and you go out and tell the community, you preach to them about community development principles, use language that they're not used to. This makes you feel a bit more superior, feel more educated. I've seen several traveller activists in the past showboating, gloating, how they went back for an education. You went back and you got yourself a settled person's education. That's what you got for yourself. Their mentality and our mentality is different. Hence, cultural differences. Culture comes from the psychology, your mind, your brain, your head. These where the differences stem. So it means we see the world differently. The settled community is fucked. No disrespect to the settled community. Not all the settled community. There's quite a few of them that are literally, if the system, when I say their system, I mean the English colonial economy that was put here for them. And I don't mean that the English are gone and we're disconnected and we're Irish. You're not. You're not even default Irish. You thought you were the default Irish by shaming and trying to kill travellers. No, you weren't even default Irish. More like default British. No disrespect to you. You might get upset too that I'm nationality Jew. But this is just facts. This has been written by guys like Nicholas Canny, a professor in your own community. And even with the stuff he had done, he still had missed some of it. But that's perfectly okay. How would he know it? He too was in a particular mentality. It's not to say that you're less Irish, because Irish is just another label. You know, nationalities, labels. But your mentality is a bit different, isn't it? So we get ill-treated as Irish people on an Irish island by Irish people who speak an English language. Some will even demand that foreigners coming into the country should speak English. Does that not tell you something? Does it not tell you that your education systems are English and you teach Irish as a lesson, a secondary program that people can choose to learn if they want? Most are discouraged by it. Most hate it. Where did you think that came from? Why do you think your settled historians can't see traveller history? They even have travellers confused that we have very little bits of history. Tons of it. Absolutely tons of it. But what they did to the travellers was they got to try to get the traveller activists to see the travellers through the settled lens. That if they could only see it their way, they would see the world better. That's what happened. You know, most of the travellers in national organisations, and I no disrespect them, are absolutely clueless. It's not that they're not doing a good work. It's not that they're not doing a good job. But they are only treating symptoms of a problem that existed deeper and longer than they could even fully understand. So what do? They block travellers because they don't like to hear that. They don't like to be told by another traveller that, you know, you might be doing it wrong. There might be other ways of doing it, because they cross-references with their settled friends, their mentors. And they're like mind-boggled. They have no idea what I'm talking about. How would they have any idea what I'm talking about? Where do you think they would have learned it? Who would have told them? So through their schools, in their educations, in their institutions, the whole idea and the whole plan was to implement an English mentality onto the Irish people. And it stuck pretty well. 800 years, it's hard to escape. I too speak the English language, but I know it's not my mentality in the same way I know I'm not belonging to the settled community. It's not that I disrespect them. The vast majority of settled community actually come from the traveller mentality, old traveller mentality. We'll go back far enough where we're one people. The divergence, the split, we didn't break away from your community. We're not the failed people. We're not the broken people. We're the people that resisted English colonialism. We're the people that fought against the Normans and the Danish and the Vikings, the conquests. We're the people that survived conflicts and wars and famines and genocides. Please, stop insulting us. We're not wayward, backward, cast out people. You, unfortunately, for one reason or another, good and bad, had participated in an English colonial system. Where do you think your towns came from? It's not to criticize what we have now, but it's the realization that you cannot be Irish. You cannot proclaim to the world that you are Irish once there is Irish travellers on this island being treated the way they're being treated for being who they are. Who are we? According to genetics, according to science, we're some of the oldest people on the planet, let alone this island. I'll take that back a step. Maybe not the whole, we all came from somewhere. We all came from the same place, maybe. But we are definitely some of the most oldest people that's on this island, and indeed other islands. Again, islands, countries, political labels. Irish, Scottish, Welsh, English, political labels. Go back far enough, they weren't there. I might be ranting on, I might be giving out, but it feels a bit better than doing this, saying it to you, than keeping it to myself. I don't necessarily get the opportunities. I was asked once not to come to an AGM. They told me I could come and speak about the ethnicity part because I had written something about it and I knew a bit about it. But I would have to leave after that because I didn't question, because I questioned their dominance, settled influence that was killing travellers. 14 settled people working in an organisation, one traveller part-time, calling themselves an Irish traveller movement. Come on. Martin Collins, good guy, and no, not the worst guy in the world. He's doing what he's doing. He believes what he believes. But he's not the manager at Paddy Point. You know, he works. He's an employee, as are about 50 members of his family. And I've nothing against that part either. No, you're a clan. But to have two settled people running that organization for 30 years, one who was a professor, or a teacher, a lecturer in Maynooth College, that taught hundreds of pupils all about the principles of community development, while that person themselves locked themselves into Paddy Point for 30 years as the chairperson and never left it. Never rotation of power. Worse than that, their board of directors, the top people, is only two people, two settled people. One who had written several books off the backs of travellers and made a decent profit. Come on, seriously. And you want to talk about equality and emancipation and freedom and all this kind of stuff. That's internalized neurological slavery. It's colonialism syndrome, Stockholm syndrome. I mean, I'm not degrading you as a person. Someone said about influence. Each and every one of us are influenced. There is no such thing as being not influenced. How would you not be influenced? We grew up in a world where we're influenced by our parents or maybe our teachers or work, whatever, our environment or community. Influence is everything. So to say that when I said that it was traveller taken advantage of by a particular political party whose name is People for Profit, I said it just, I'll say it again. They did take advantage. I don't think they're the worst, most evilest people in the world. They have been doing reasonably good work, but it's only been lip service. And it's only a case of you follow me. I mean, they don't tell the travellers about Trotsky or Karl Marx or their ideas of the world. Nothing against either one of them either when I think about it. But the empowerment part is not with People for Profit. They are primarily another upper middle class people with an upper middle class mentality. They are settled people who have a settled mentality. Some of these people, most of the people, are focused in Dublin. That's not a curse if you're in Dublin, but your mentality, no disrespect to you, is a little bit more colonialized than it would be to say the rest of Ireland. Maybe compared to the West anyway, most certainly. And that again, it's to be expected. I mean, it's a 1,000-year-old city. Trinity College is not Irish. I've seen someone getting offended a while back when the British claimed Trinity College is one of their amazing colleges. This person was a trainee in some of their top colleges, and which one it was. I think I took offense to it. It's an English college. Who do you think built it? It still teaches English. It hasn't even changed its education curriculum that much. Little. It's still an English college, as is Maynooth College, as is all the Queen's colleges. I know I'm venturing in a few different ways here and over and back, but again, it's a bit of a rant, and shall we see how it goes? I might even put it up. But anyhow, at least I'm talking to myself. I can play it back to myself later on, have a conversation with myself, and see if I can pick out all the flaws and the faults where people are getting so offended. So yeah, sometimes there's a couple of traveller activists. They happen to be female. The male ones, well, they run away actually, most of them. At least with the female traveller activists, I mean, they'll engage, but it's a bit mind-boggling at time because, you know, they put these kind of restrictions on you, and they put these, oh yeah, it's hard to explain. Anyhow, it's trickery, and it's not right. So the individualism and the activism and all these stakes and claims, and you get paid for it. And in one way, it's almost a form of fraud, or it's definitely moral corruption. It's telling the people one thing and who you are and what you do, and then doing the completely opposite. Because running in elections off the back of an NGO, running from a community platform like that, and not coming back to your community and saying, look, as a collectiveness and as empowerment, I think we should run an internal election, and that way it'll give the community a vote to have their political representatives. No, you didn't. You took completely advantage of your own people. You don't know you're doing it. That's a sad thing. And I'm not trying to criticize that all that much, but the disregard in what has been said to you or not being able to understand it or to see it. That's quite remarkable. So yeah, again, I'm giving out like hell now about all of them, but in one way I think it's what else do you do? We're in the middle of a pandemic. I've said it from the beginning and I'll say it again, that the travel organizations are not handling this the way they could have and they should have. From day one, they were asleep. It was only when I, myself, and one or two more had started putting up videos, contacting them, calling them out to do something, to start addressing. They came on, and they are doing a lot of behind-the-scenes work, and no doubt about that. They're working with state agencies, they're trying to get people to Portaloos and all that. But they're doing all the things again, once again, where the settled people think what is best for travellers. And national organizations that do not know their own history cannot know what's best for their own people. It's impossible. No, there was no understanding of how clusters are the most vulnerable, dangerous situation to be in. The guy in South Korea, in the apartment, 19 people died. It was because they were boxed in, clustered. So the virus spread like wildfire as it does in clusters. It isn't the same virus necessarily. It gets stronger. So something happens when it is in a cluster, when it bounces from one person over and back, into another person, It's just, it's the same virus building up momentum. And this is why the world is petrified. This is why all the rich people are petrified. I mean, this is not just one off pandemic. I've no doubt more pandemics will come. It could be a case that this pandemic could mutate. We don't know. I don't know. How would I know? The scientists don't know. So that's why I'm okay talking about it, because when scientists themselves don't know, it doesn't necessarily mean we can't take abstracts from what they're all saying and combine our own thoughts and our own bits and pieces. So halting sites, my fears are the worst. But you're in a dead camps, there's no doubt about it. I said to Paddy Point, I said, open up as a testing centre, opening up as a facility to take travellers off very overcrowded camps and set up facilities. These are talking about logistics, trying to make it complicated to work. You don't see it that complicated when they're using Hotel City West for the exact same thing. So there is no complications or only implications. Travellers on halting sites, direct provisions. Travellers in nursing homes. Travellers on halting site, residents in direct provisions, residents in nursing homes, settled people in housing apartments, tower blocks, or whatever they might call them. You guys are living in depth traps. You'd have to go into the most extreme version of lockdown. And you should do it. If it's the pass, you really almost, isolate yourself in the worst, not the worst way possible, but most safest, protective way possible, because it's not going to be good. I mentioned this at Point, told this at Point, but I've done videos about it. Do you think the travel organizations would share it? Do you think I was making this stuff up? I was taking what I was learning from the World National Organization, also with other professors such as Wing Young Chu from South Korea, who's dealing with the pandemic, that side of it, who was part of a great setup of maintaining the virus and phasing it out best way possible. But he went through strict regimes to do that. And he spoke about the guy in South Korea in the apartment where the 19 people died. He spoke about how the clusters of people together and how the virus can continues among that group and grow stronger and stronger. So Waterloos, Portaloos, or anything else you put on a halting site necessarily won't cut it. There should have been very, very safer facilities put in place, emergency facilities. So here we have the dilemma. It's been thrown back that, and already that one particular organization is definitely on the way alluding from any responsibility by stating it very clearly that the responsibility lies with the HSC and the state. That is not necessarily true. The organizations have received a lot of state funding to train travellers as public health nurses, community health nurses. So you have the frontline staff, you have the facilities. Talking about hotels and other facilities being opened up. Worst case scenario, we're already fucking hated. Do you think they're going to welcome us with a virus? Do you think travellers might get refused, turned away, excused away for one reason or another, left to die, nowhere to go? That mightn't happen. They mightn't even get out of the site. This virus that goes around and around and around and picks up the strength, when it gets strong enough, it doesn't care about age. This is why there's young people dying. Several young people have died. I don't know if it's the case of clusters, but we've seen settled people in Ireland shit themselves over clusters. Settled people have every right to be scared, particularly the rich, because according to this professor, and partly guessing, that if the clusters exist and the virus grows stronger, well, now you're talking about a stronger version of the virus. That's a lot to be worried about. So I guess I'm not sure if I covered everything or all my rants, but maybe I'll just brush up on a few bits and pieces about the individualism, about the traveler activism, and about the opportunists, and about taking advantage of your community. You might see these as insults to your very core and your being of who you are and what you do, because you truly believe that you're doing the best job you're doing, and you are doing the best job you're doing, but statistically and factually. And death tolls would suggest that there's something isn't right. And you would think you would stop and listen. You haven't. For years, you've rejected travelers, your own community, to look good, feel privileged among the settled class. That's just sad reality. And that's what they call Stockholm Syndrome, internalized oppression. Traveler activism, in my opinion, some have a worse case of internalized oppression. You've got psychological internalized oppression. You know, they truly believe what they believe, despite the facts. They will blame the state, the government. Yes, look at us right this moment in a pandemic. We are down on our knees begging the HSE. We're down on our knees begging the state, help us, help us. We couldn't even give advice to our own community. The organizations hadn't even got the decency of coming together for a video conference, a regular update to their community, because these thoughts never come into their head. They didn't think about the genetic part of this in terms of the underlying issues. Again, they would have thought about them. We've been raised in them. But I'm not talking about in terms of the halting sites and the camps. People like that with the underlying health issues. And it won't matter if they get sick on the site and they go to the hospital. It still might not be good, because the virus would be a stronger strain at that point if isolation isn't strictly kept. But it's impossible to keep a strict isolation in a muddied camp with one tap. Some places no water at all. The ridiculing of travelers by travelers, unbelievable. Travelers told to wash their hands, insulting. Most insulting thing you could ever say to a traveler. But again, they have no idea what to say. So they'll take bits and pieces from the update from the HSE. The HSE is not trained, understood how to deal with travelers, little on their own community. You know, you really, really fucked up this time. I hate saying it. I mean, you fucked up enough times. You've caused enough deaths. You know, again, a particular traveler, won't mention name. Come on, I didn't correct him because again, it was a pandemic. Talking about no silver bullet. I was putting things to them that it was a little bit beyond their understanding in terms of they should have known this. They're working in a multi-million organization. Well, multi-million over all the years, all the millions they got. But a €1 million type setup. Educated people, have all the access, all the resources, and hadn't got a clue what I was talking about. They have representatives that he self-elected themselves that goes over to Europe under human rights committees, United Nations, whatever other groups or committees they're involved with. We didn't send them. We didn't elect them. They elected themselves by our settled people, chose them. Then when they were over there, they were working on what they call the Creed Report. It's a kind of an organization, I forget the full pronunciation now of it, but against all forms of discrimination and racism and eradications and all that kind of stuff. And that particular report is not the report we should have been on. Now, when I mentioned about Indigenous travelers, they say, yeah, we know, so that's been said. But what they didn't know was that the Creed report isn't designed for Indigenous people. It's designed for ethnic minorities. Again, I'll explain the difference. Ethnic, by its legal definition, are a people without a land. So we were associated as being gypsies and Romas, which is absolutely nothing wrong with these people or communities. We have very strong interlinks, very similar cultures. Why? Because we are pre-colonial cultures. We existed as we do in the same type mentality that was never interfered or broke with in the same way it happened settled people through colonialism. So they had absolutely no idea I was speaking about the indigenous people's rights. A report we sent in 2 years ago to the Senate that got rejected, never been called up. Traveller sends in something that could save lives into a Traveller committee type setup that I think Colette Keller was involved with. Again, a wonderful human being. But I remember going to one meeting with several of the organisations at it, and them all singing from the same page, replicate, up and down, no difference. How would it be different when they were getting all the same programmes to read in the first place, no matter where they were in the country? I challenged them on some of it. I never got called back. So Colette Keller, happy retirement. But nothing personal against you. You're a wonderful human being. I know you tried your best. You were trying much harder than some of the travellers were, and that's a fact. So yeah, the Creed report, they have us down as an ethnic group of people without a land. You might think, what difference does that make? There is no difference. There's a big difference. We did come from a place where we had lands, houses, farms, we had castles, we had territories. All of them places existed and were ours. Not solely ours, you know. So the English broke that down, so on and so forth. We get all that kind of part, right? So to say that we're an ethnic group is incorrect. And to travel organizations to say that we're an indigenous ethnic group but don't understand the definitions of creed and indigenous people's rights, or the 2007 treaty that was signed by Fine Gael upholding and respecting the indigenous people's rights and their right for political aspirations, right to engage with politics in their own way of thinking. So none of that ever came. Why? Had it anything to do with one of the coordinators of settled person at Pavy Point, whose partner is Fine Gael, that she herself is Fine Gael. So we've got what the anti-traveller right-wing political party operating a traveller organisation with 2 settled people at the directors, a handful of travellers, well, more than a handful, but one family of travellers working in that organisation, operating on the wrong reports, excluding, misleading people constantly. An organisation that received 280,000 extra just before the ethnicity campaign. Ethnicity campaign that Martin Collins, in his own words, had said here. I didn't correct him. I'll bring him on and talk again about it. That said there was a misinterpretation or a misleading campaign that the ethnicity would bring this and it'd be a silver bullet. And he himself led that campaign for 10 years. So had Catherine Joyce. So had various other travellers. Actually, I was advocating for that because that's what I believed at the time. That's what I've been told. Let's go back a number of years now. Actually, at AGM, Waterford maybe, another time, advocating non-stop, promising travellers that they get better education, they get halting sites, and they get all of these if they keep lobbying and supporting the ethnic campaign. The ethnic campaign had nothing to do with rights, lands, opportunities. It was nothing. It was symbolical. An actual fact, our health statistics got worse since then. Again, a recorded fact. Statistics. Organizations and travellers within them, insecurities, whatever it might be. You can see me as the villain, the troublesome agitator that hates organizations, don't like settled people, because you did say I was anti-settled, not anti-shit. You know, being pro-traveller doesn't make you anti-anything. You know, looking after your community who are the most vulnerable, the most devastated people on the island. Come on. So with that, I suppose, yeah, I hate giving out. It's not what I want to be doing, but, you know, I'm self-isolating. I've been self-isolating for the last 20 odd years. I also Frank Caffrey, a good guy, but I gave him a bit of a scalding this morning. Absolutely uncalled for it. He didn't deserve it. Just, you know, one of those things you get stressed, I think, and no, I absolutely know right. So I do apologise, Frankie, sincerely. To the traveller actives again, just in case I leave things hanging and you're using your own creative side. This is not about criticising traveller activists. It's not anti-traveller women, anything like that. This is about equality. You can't preach equality if you're not going to practice it. You cannot criticise me for criticising organisations when you do not engage. You cannot criticize travellers who give out about activists when they block traveller activists because traveller activists challenge their settled friends for tens of thousands of euros of misuse of funds. So come on. All I hear is a constant hypocritism coming from the people who are preaching and teaching about human rights. They've done more damage to their own community by their own self-serving attitudes. Again, who am I to say this? How dare I? I'd probably be no different if I was in the same position as you. If I grew up thinking the same things you were thinking, if I was taught the same things you were taught, maybe I'd be doing the exact same thing as you're doing, which brings it back to a psychological thing, that your operation within the organizations are not helping our community. It is not we want you to close down. It's not what we want you to go away. Things couldn't get any worse for us. You do know that. You know this thing about, you've said a couple of times, if I keep doing this, it'll cause serious trouble for the community and your worst fears will come true. What worst fears do you think would come true apart from you losing your job and your bit of status? I mean, we're already dying. We're already living in a crisis. I mean, what have we to lose? Well, it doesn't make sense. So the dictatorship, you can do that. You can keep doing that. But remember this, you might see now, for now, one person giving out. But what I'm saying isn't so far out there that you would even call it a rant. It's based on everything that we know, that you know as much as I know. But yet, there's no room for engagement on your end of it. And you come on, you criticize me and demonize me and label me. But have you once ever picked up the phone and said, look, I think we should sort this out. I think we should have a meeting. We should all get together and find out what's this all about, how we can address it together so we can move on. Not one traveller activist. Like I said, I contacted Chris McDonough, National Traveller Mediation Service, and he was rejected. Same service to receive tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, I don't know, over the years to train for mediation, and then for their organizations who take great feathers and pleasures bragging about them, rejected them. Lives are going to be lost. Lives will always be lost. It's part of nature. We live and we die. There's a whole lot to go on in between. Organizations, I'm asking you to sit down and address these issues. You cannot be political representative. You're not even representative. Representative in short means representative, means a political choice where someone had elected you to be the rep in the first place. You did not. You boycotted all of that kind of stuff or bypassed it. So you're in a position where you're operating on pure egotism, greed. Whether you know that or not, it makes no difference. The outcomes in reality says completely different. I'm not asking you to go away to do it, stop what you're doing. We will stop a Traveller Assembly. I will never be part of running an election for my own community, full stop. So if you think I'm trying to operate a supreme leader, again, that'll only be part of your delusions. It's about saving lives. It's an opportunity where organizations could have a lot more work, important work to be doing, such as addressing multitude of issues I could raise in a heartbeat. But what do we get from Bernard Joyce and ITM? Last 3 years, same guy called me a traitor to my community because I questioned the 2016-17 traveller ethnicity. Balls of a job. And then had one of the travellers on the balcony run around telling everyone to clap hands when Enda Kenny was finished. Like, fuck, I would. I shouted down and asked him, will he apologise for the state's torture of its people, travellers, or something to that effect. But yeah, I mean, that's the mentality we're in. We should be grateful and thankful. We couldn't do without them. It's impossible. Think about it. That's your mentality at the moment. Do we need to settle people? The settled people are going to need travellers far more, but unfortunately won't, because most of the organisations are trying to change the mentality of travellers to suit the settled community. In other words, we have to become settled people before we can become travellers. Lunacy you're participating in. It's no wonder the psychological effects we're having on the community. All the suicides, all the mental health issues, it did not exist. Why do you think it did not exist in the 60s? Now you say it was the state's fault. Okay, state give you equality. What happened? State give you millions of euros to do courses. What happened? Had you improved your community? Had you improved the employment statistics, health statistics, any statistics? Because every statistic seems to be getting worse. So if the government are that evil, and despite you guys at the table, unelected or not, Where's your outroar? Where's your public outcry? Where's your protesting? Most we ever get is a statement or two. Apart from that, it fades away. We have travellers accepting apologies on behalf of races. On behalf of travellers, by races on organisations. Same organisations won't engage with travellers. So they disengage with travellers to questions to settle people, but they accept racist settled people's apologies on our behalf, despite our protests. I mean, that is absolutely ludicrousy. Again, this is some rant. But yeah, I'm not sure. But yeah, I'm open now. I won't put it up in, it's too long. But yeah, I might just leave it at that and take the backlash and get over that. And we keep doing this over and over and over, because the only backlash I'm ever getting is abuse. No logic, no common sense, no conversation. Why? Because you have feelings, and your feelings tells you that I'm a bad person, that you should not engage with me. Your feelings are not that important when people are putting their children and their loved ones in the ground, are they? Have a good day, independent activists, individuals. At the same time, I still respect you bastards, but you know, we'll get there.